Right, I think it's time to strap yourselves in, enjoy the background footage, and get ready for a little bit of a ramble, because today we're talking about something that I've wanted to make a video on for a while, and that is misinformation. I'm not talking about the masses of misinformation about all kinds of subjects that we're dealing with in this day and age. I am talking specifically about one kind of misinformation, and that is misinformation about lucid dreaming. You see, the trouble with finding reliable information on lucid dreaming and knowing what information to trust is that you are essentially going in quite blind. You are relying on people to tell you about their internal experiences, and there is no real way for you to then fact check that they in fact did have those experiences. So to illustrate my point a little bit, let me share two dream stories with you. In the first of my dreams, I was at a circus, and inside the circus were these three large elephants. Except there was something off about these elephants, and that was the fact that they were changing colour as they moved. Every time the elephants would walk past me, they would come back a different colour. In my second dream, I was living in a wealthy mansion, and I had a bunch of bodyguards, and they were taking me somewhere in a car on a trip. But when I got to the car, I found out there was room for all of the bodyguards, but there was no space left for me, so I couldn't actually get in. So now you tell me, did I just tell you two of my dreams? Did I just make two dreams up? Was one of them real and one fictional? How would you know? So before we go any further, just for fun, I want you to go down to the comments below and actually comment if you think both of these stories are true, if you think one of them is true, and if you think one of them is made up, or if you think both of these stories, these dream stories, are actually made up. Leave your guess down in the comments below before I actually give you the answer. Have you gone and made your guess yet? Well, in actual fact, the first story about the circus and the elephants was completely made up, while the second story about the car with the bodyguards was in fact one of my real dreams from a couple of nights ago. Now, it's quite possible that some, or even a lot of you, did in fact guess that, and that could have just been a lucky guess, or it could have been through some contextual clues, maybe just the way that I worded one of those stories was a little bit more believable. But at the end of the day, that's all you had to go off. How believable the story sounded, and how believable my voice sounded when I was telling them, and just whether you think that sounds like a realistic dream story. You didn't actually have any way of verifying if either of these ones were true. So I think you see where the problem comes in. The problem is, whenever anyone is giving lucid dreaming information, whether it be sharing a dream story, giving a guide, or just giving some helpful advice to someone, they are telling you about their internal experiences that you can't necessarily go ahead and verify. The only real process of verification you have is, for example, if they do give you some advice and you take that advice and you're then able to repeat the results that they got, then you can sort of assume, hey, this person probably knows what they're talking about. But I think it's really important to remember the limitations of that. If I give you a guide for a particular lucid dreaming technique, and you go ahead and you follow the guide step by step and you end up having some lucid dreams with it, then you can say, hey, this is a working lucid dreaming technique. But let's try something different that I could tell you. I could tell you now that I've had 16,438 lucid dreams. How would you then go ahead and verify that? You absolutely can't, so you're really just taking my word for it if I pull that number out there. And by the way, in case it wasn't clear, that number was in fact completely made up. Similarly, if I say I am having 5 lucid dreams every single night, I can say that, but there's no way for you to go ahead and verify that I am or am not having that many lucid dreams each night. Now, perhaps if I make a claim about how many lucid dreams I'm having and how often I'm having them, and you follow along with all of the techniques that I advise using and that I use myself, then maybe you would find that, hey, you're getting a similar number of lucid dreams, so hey, this actually seems like a believable number. But otherwise, the question really just comes down to how much you trust what I'm telling you. And the big problem here is how we usually trust people in other areas. Let's say that I want to go to someone for financial advice. Who am I going to trust? The person that has negative $30 in their bank account, or the person who just bought a $7 million mansion? Probably the latter. He probably knows what to do with his money a little bit better. So here comes the trap, because if you apply the same rationale to lucid dreaming, then you are going to go for the person who has had the most lucid dreams. Except there's the problem, because you don't know. You don't know how many lucid dreams anyone has had. You don't know how many lucid dreams I have had. You don't know how many lucid dreams any other lucid dreaming YouTuber has had, because there is no way for you to verify those numbers. And I'm going to illustrate where this gets really problematic with another example. So let's imagine that you are playing an MMO and you are leveling up your character in this game and you get, a certain amount of experience points per hour, and that gradually levels you up higher and higher. Now imagine that for whatever reason, this game decided to trust its players. You would see, as you're grinding and leveling up, how much XP you're getting per hour. But at the end of the day, it would be up to you to write down how much total XP you gained that day. There would be no checks in place to make sure that you were honest. The game would just trust you to input that number. I want you to think for a moment what the high scores of that game would look like, what people's levels would look like in that game. Because of course you would have some honest players. They input the amount of XP they got, and maybe, they make some mistakes here or there because they forgot the numbers, or perhaps they read the numbers a little bit wrong or something. But by and large, they're going to be pretty close to the actual numbers of XP that they got. Now let's say that there is a maximum of, say, 1,000 experience points that you can gain per hour legitimately in that game. But there is no maximum on what you can write in at the end of the day. Well, obviously then, what's going to happen is all of the highest level players in that game are going to be the players who lied about how much experience they gained each day, because the honest players won't be able to get more than 1,000 experience per hour. So, even if they played all day and didn't sleep, they'd only be able to get 24,000 experience. But someone who is able to write in whatever they like can get 50,000 experience a day. They can get 150,000 experience points a day. They can get as much as they like. And so all of the highest levels are going to be the people that purely pulled those numbers right out of the air and just made them up. So going back to what we were saying earlier, we now have a problem, because our instinct when we want to find out about lucid dreaming is to go to the people that have had the highest number of lucid dreams. But we have the same system in place as this game. We have a trust system where anyone can say they've had as many lucid dreams as they like, and there is no way to verify it. Now obviously, just like this MMO example that I gave, there is going to be a certain limit to how many lucid dreams someone can have in a particular period of time. We don't have infinite time to sleep. We don't have infinite numbers of dreams each night. So what that means is, just like in this game example, all of the highest numbers, all of the highest claims for the most number of lucid dreams are going to be the people who have misrepresented those numbers. They're going to be the people who have made them up. Now let's go back to our game example for a minute. Let's imagine that we have this 1,000 experience per hour limit, but let's say that limit isn't actually told to the players. It's something they have to discover for themselves after playing the game. So imagine that you're a new player of this game and you want to legitimately get as much experience per hour as possible. And you go to the internet and you look up some guides. Naturally, what's going to happen is you're going to go to the highest level players for advice because, hey, they have the most experience, so they're probably the ones who know how to gain the most experience. As well as that, you're also going to gravitate towards the guides that promise the craziest results. The guides that tell you that you can get 10,000 experience per hour or 20,000 experience per hour. And the irony here being that since these outlandish claims are coming from people who just cheat the stats at the end of the day, those people probably aren't even bothering to play the game to get the experience in the first place. So the information they give you might not even get you that 1,000 experience per hour that you could normally get. So what happens if you notice this and you're following these guides that tell you can get 10,000 experience per hour and you're finding that you only get 100 or 200 experience per hour and you're not sure what's going wrong? Well, it actually gets even worse than that because there is a bit of a problem with human psychology. You would think that when we realise something isn't working or isn't happening, that we would go, okay, that was a load of rubbish. But in actual fact, when we actually fall into believing for ridiculous claims and we find evidence that those claims aren't working, we often tend to double down. Just look at all of the examples of various cults around the world that said that, the world was going to end on December 21st, 2012 or whatever, and then suddenly they made a new claim that it was going to be 2014 or whatever, and the actual cult members, instead of leaving the cult when the first prediction didn't work, ended up doubling down and actually becoming more invested in the cult because it felt like they'd already given up too much to lose here. And if they actually were to admit that they were wrong, they have to admit that they were, well, to put it mildly, a little bit gullible, and no one really wants to admit that. So what ends up happening is the biggest deceivers end up luring in the new people who are misinformed, and then those new people, not wanting to believe that they have been misinformed, will then parrot that misinformation onto other new people, and it just spreads like wildfire, and you have all of these people just giving out all of this inaccurate information. Essentially, you have the blind leading the blind. So at this point, you probably get where I'm going with this, that this is also a problem in the lucid dreaming sphere, that the people with the most outlandish claims about their experiences are going to be the ones that get a lot of people then following them for those experiences, hoping to replicate them and do the same. And even when those people aren't quite getting the same results as these people they look up to, they are then going to be parroting that same misinformation onto other people because of the sunk cost fallacy and the fact that they don't want to admit that, hey, maybe they've been swindled. And it doesn't just stop at sharing that information either. People who have been misinformed and don't want to admit that they've been misinformed will often be the most aggressive defenders of those misinformed beliefs. They will be the people who will come out and potentially comment on this video saying, hey, you can't say that. The people who have had all of these thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of lucid dreams are just better at lucid dreaming. You guys just haven't had enough experience yet. And the funny but also kind of sad reality is that these people who aggressively defend these beliefs will often have had zero evidence of them themselves. They won't even be very experienced at lucid dreaming, or they might not have even had a lucid dream yet, but they will aggressively defend these beliefs, even to the point of lying about their own experience, because they are so adamant that these people that they have fallen into believing are the real experts. And any suggestion otherwise threatens their worldview, and so they do feel the need to come out in defense of these beliefs. So what can you do to avoid being misled by this? Well, the first thing that I would do is I would probably just throw out any numbers that anyone claims about how many experiences they've had or how often they're having their experiences or whatever, because at the end of the day, you can't verify that information. You can perhaps trust some people to be more reliable with that information than others, but at the end of the day, you don't really have any way of verifying that trust. So it is better to just leave those numbers out altogether and not think about them too much. But then how do you know who knows what they're talking about? If you can't look at how many lucid dreams someone has had, or you can't look at how often someone is getting lucid as a way to tell if you can trust them, then how are you going to know if someone is giving you correct information? Well, the answer is simple really, through your own direct experience. I said in my game analogy earlier that there was a certain limit to how much experience you could gain per hour. Well, if you played that game long enough and you experimented with different variables, you would find yourself not getting past this limit of 1,000 experience per hour, and so you'd be able to make a reasonable, educated guess that that's what you can get. And you would also then be able to make a reasonable, educated guess that the people who are telling you that and are telling you that you can get this much per hour and no more are the people who know what they're talking about and who can give you some good advice on the game. So the same principle applies here for lucid dreaming. Instead of just taking people at their claims, take them at their advice. Don't just consume the information without putting it into use, actually try out the advice that different people give and find out which advice resonates with you, which advice works best for you, and this is even going to go for people that are all giving you legitimate information. If you go to 5 people who are all giving you legitimate information, you might just find that a couple of those people tailor that information in a way that just better suits you. There are going to be some people that watch my guides and my videos and don't get as much out of them as they do from, say, someone else's videos, and vice versa. There are going to be some people that go to a different channel and they don't have quite the same experience they have here. But let the work and the results speak for themselves, rather than just going to what people are claiming they can do. Now, does that mean that we should forget listening to dream stories, that we should forget listening to people's experiences and all of these fun tales of how many lucid dreams they've had or whatever? Not necessarily, but I would take those kinds of stories like a story that you maybe hear at a bar on a Friday night. Maybe the story is completely true, or maybe someone is playing it up, embellishing a bit, or in fact making the whole thing up. Now, just for fun, before we end the video, I would like to ask you guys, what is the most ridiculous claim that you've ever heard about lucid dreaming? Let me know down in the comments below. Now, if you do find the content on this channel helpful, then I think you'll also find the content in my lucid dreaming book helpful. So that's one way that you can actually support the channel and what I do here by checking out that book in the link in the top right hand corner. If you enjoy my videos, you should also make sure you're subscribed and have notifications enabled so you can stay up to date when new ones come out. And if you want to keep watching right now, check out the videos on screen, go watch one of those, and I'll see you there soon. Take care.